Hi everyone, welcome back to Nick's Diecast. In today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing this 1/18 scale Aston Martin DB7 Vantage made by Maisto, or Maisto depending on how you like to pronounce their name. My parents got me this model for my birthday on eBay for around $41 in total, including shipping and everything. I thought that was a good price they were able to find this model at, considering that Maisto is no longer making this particular model. And this particular color is harder to find than the other two colors that this model came in. Maisto made this model of the Aston Martin DB7 Vantage from around 1999 until around 2004 or 2005. The actual Aston Martin DB7 was produced between 1994 and 2004. And the DB7 Vantage, which was the V12 variant of the DB7, was produced from 1999 until 2004. And one thing to note is that the popularity of the Vantage version of the DB7 was actually so great that Aston Martin discontinued the inline-six version of the car, which was just the regular DB7, because sales for the V12 version were so much higher compared to the regular inline-six version. But once again, Maisto produced this particular model for about 10 years or so. The Premier Edition line was the primary line that Maisto sold this model under, although the British Racing Green version could sometimes be seen as a special edition version, at least the first couple of years that Maisto was producing this particular model. This model was primarily sold under the Premier Edition line. This model does come in 3 different colors. It comes in British Racing Green with a 2-tone white and green interior, as well as a dark metallic blue with a 2-tone black and white interior. And then of course it comes in this beautiful lighter blue, which is almost like a silver hue, with the 2-tone black and white interior. I think this is personally my favorite color of the 3 that Maisto sold this particular model in. A lot of people I know are a fan of this particular car in the British Racing Green, but something about this blue I think just looks gorgeous on this particular car. In terms of prices of the model, you can primarily find this model on sites such as eBay, and prices do vary widely depending on the color of the model, its overall condition, and whether or not you're getting the model in the original box or not. This particular one was $41 once you factor in tax and shipping. But in general, you can find this particular model in its 3 different colors for as low as $10 for a beat-up green version with no box, to as high as $60 or slightly higher for the executive edition version of this color, which came with a wood base and had kind of a more special looking box. This is from the Premier Edition line, which was of course the primary line that Maisto sold this model under during its production run. But I probably wouldn't pay much more than $50 for this particular model. So in the video, I will review the model and compare the details and overall quality that you see to more recently released Maisto models, and see if this model holds up well to more recently released Maisto models. So in terms of the details, we will start up here at the front of the car. Maisto, I think, really did do a good job of capturing the overall look and shape of the DB7 Vantage. This was quite a gorgeous car, and I think it has aged quite well in terms of its overall look and design, even in the mid-2020s, 25 plus years after it was initially sold in 1994. I think the overall look and design, once again, has aged quite well. And Maisto really did capture the beauty of this particular car with their 1/18 scale model, I think, for sure. In the front here, Maisto, I think, did a great job of detailing the headlights. They do have the separately cast molded in bulbs, as you see here. There are a couple of pegs, but they're actually where the light bulbs themselves would be if this were the real car. So I don't really think the pegs are a big deal in the case of this particular model. And the headlight lenses, I would say, are nice and flush with the body. Same goes for the fog lights down here as well. And the turn signals. None of them are painted on. They are all done as separately cast plastic pieces, which is great, considering that for a lot of Maisto models, you see turn signals or the side indicator lights as painted on parts instead of separately cast plastic pieces. But this is an older Maisto model, so that was back when they were still doing the separately cast plastic pieces for the turn signals and the fog lights of their models. But very good job, I would say. The lenses are a little bit loose, but that's not really a big deal, especially when you have the model up on the shelf. The badge you see in the center here is just a sticker, unfortunately, but you can read the Aston Martin inscription on it nonetheless. If this model were to be released today, you would of course see this as a printed on badge as opposed to a sticker. But as long as you're careful when cleaning this model up, the sticker I don't think will be a big deal. Maisto did a good job as well with the center grille that you see here. This is a fully perforated slatted grille, which you would of course see on the real vehicle, and it has a nice chrome finish to it, which I do like to see. Then of course you have the DB7 Vantage license plate on here too. Cool touch. You do have this lower grille down here. This is a mesh grille, or it would be a mesh grille if this were the real car. The mesh is not perforated, but at least it does have a texture that looks like the real mesh you would see on the real car. So Maisto, I think, did a decent job with that. There is kind of a sizable gap on the hood, at least in the front here. If you were to get the darker blue version or the darker green version, it would not be as noticeable, I don't think, but because this is the lighter blue version, you can see it, I think, quite well, especially when you look at the model closely like this, but not really a big deal. I have seen far worse panel gaps on Maisto models, so this I don't think is a big deal in the case of this particular model. As far as the paint quality goes on the model, I think Maisto did a solid job. Once again, this metallic blue finish just looks fantastic on this particular car. In terms of the real life paint color and name, I'm not really too sure about what it was called. I just know that a lot of the pictures that I've seen of the real car in this color are the convertible versions or the Volante versions. So I don't know if this color actually came on the DB7 Vantage coupe or not, but even if it didn't, it did come on the Volante at the very least, and it does look fantastic on this particular model. The finish is a metallic finish, and it is nice and smooth throughout the car. I couldn't really find any problems with the paint. Sometimes you have like these rough regions here and there, or the orange peel effect going on, but I couldn't find that on this model, and that is, I think, kind of impressive for a Maisto model that was made around 2001 or 2002, because their models were really good, I think, in terms of quality and detail back then, but the paint finishes were kind of, iffy sometimes in terms of their overall quality, but I couldn't find any particular problems on the paint job of my Aston Martin DB7 Vantage model here. So I thought that was fantastic. The wheels and tires on the model look very well done. They are what you would see on the real vehicle. You have the Aston Martin badge printed on the centers of each of the wheels. You do have the disc brake that moves with the wheel, but you don't have any brake calipers, which looks kind of odd, but from a far distance, you really can't see that based off the number of spokes on the wheels, but it would have been nice if Maisto did include the detail of the calipers, but I think aside from that, what they have for the wheels, discs, and tires look very well done. These are the Bridgestone tires that you would see on the real car. This was back when Maisto was including the branded tires on their models, and I always liked to see that. And you do see that on this particular Aston Martin DB7 Vantage model here. So that was a fantastic touch, I thought. The model, of course, does have full steering and suspension too, which is nice to say. Nice sturdy side mirrors. The paint doesn't match up extremely well with the metal portions of the car, but at least the mirrors are the right overall look and shape compared to what you would see on the real vehicle. Decent looking wipers too. They're done as kind of one single mold though, but from a distance you really can't see that. So decently done, I think. You do have the side intakes on here too, which are done as separately cast plastic pieces and look very well done. You have these additional side indicator lights, I think, on either fender. These are just painted on, but they are really tiny, so I think that would be kind of hard for Maisto to make them as separately cast plastic pieces. But the real DB7 Vantage did have them, and they are on the model, which is nice to say. Nice separately cast chrome door handles on the model, too. In terms of the rear portion of the model, I think Maisto did a decent job with details back here. The taillights look okay, aside from the fact that you do have these massive black pegs on this side and on that side of each of the taillights. Not really a big deal though, because from a far distance you can't see them all that well, but when you look at it closely they are kind of these obvious pegs. But aside from that, the taillights themselves do fit nice and flush with the body, and you have the separately cast plastic pieces for the side marker lights back here, which is nice to see. You do have the DB7 Vantage badging back here too. These are embossed on the model, whereas the Aston Martin badge is a sticker, much like the front. But aside from that, they are the right proportion to what you would see if this were the real vehicle. So I think Maisto did do a decent job in that sense, for sure. In terms of the opening features of the model, you do have the opening rear trunk, which opens up like so. Not a whole lot to see back here. You just have the very small trunk that the real car had. Has a nice kind of rough texture in there, I guess, to simulate the carpeting that you would see on the real car. The trunk pan itself does not go like all the way up to where the trunk lid meets the metal. If this were the real car, you wouldn't see that big gap back there, but that's not really a big deal because this is a budget grade model that would have retailed for like 30 bucks back in the day. But I think they did a decent job back here in the trunk. The trunk does open up on the dogleg hinges, but that is pretty standard of what you would see for a Maisto model's trunk. Of course, you also get the opening hood, too, which opens up like that. And this hood does have a prop rod on it, too. The hood, at least on my model, does stay up, but at times you may need to use the prop rod, especially if the hood, ages and the hinges become a little bit weak, because these are the dogleg hinges that come standard on Maisto model hoods. You just put up the prop rod and then it meets with this little groove in the hood there. And then you can just hold it up like that. The engine detail, I think, is very well done for a budget grade Maisto model. This is the 5.9 liter V12 that you would see on the real DB7 Vantage, and Maisto, I think, captured it quite well here. This is made up of multiple three-dimensional plastic components, and you can actually see all the way down to the bottom of the car. There are various molded in wires and hoses going on in there too. You do have the nice embossed Aston Martin V12 on the sides of the main block, and you actually have the warning labels on the front portion of the engine too, which is very cool to see. This was back when Maisto was still putting in a lot of effort into the detail of the engines of their models. They weren't just, single flat, I shouldn't say flat, but, single, almost two-dimensional looking pieces of plastic. This is made up of multiple different plastic pieces, and then of course you have all the additional details with the different wiring going on in there too. So I think for a budget grade model, the engine of this model does look fantastic. And of course, when you have the model up on the shelf with the hood up like that, it does look very cool, I think. The hood is a little bit on the heavy side, but at least you do have the prop rod for the case of when the hood becomes too weak to hold up on its own. You can just use the prop rod to hold up the hood. But I think Maisto did a fantastic job with the engine of the model, especially considering that this model first came out around 2000 or so. So good job, I think, on their part, for sure. And then, of course, you have the opening doors on the model as well. They open up on dog-leg hinges, and they are a little bit on the stiff side, but that's a good thing to see because this model was pretty much brand new in the box when I got it. So they do open up fairly wide, but keep in mind that the hinges may become loose over time, depending on how frequently the doors are moved. So I would try to keep the doors closed as much as possible so they stay on the stronger side. But the interior detail on the model, I think, is very well done for an older Maisto model. You can see for the dashboard and the center stack, it does have that very nice wood grain look to it. And then you have very nice detailing with all the knobs and buttons on the center stack, even with the very small Aston Martin badge above those two vents there too. You can even see the small clock in the middle there, and a very nice texture going on with the dashboard and with the steering wheel too. You do see the DB7 logo on the steering wheel. And then once again, you can see the small badge above the vents on the center portion of the dashboard here. The shifter, I think, could use a bit more detailing. It's just done as a single black plastic piece. I think you would see a little bit more detail if this were the real shifter on the real car, but at least Maisto, I think, did a decent job with that particular component of the interior. And once again, you do have some nice texture going on with the dashboard too, and with the floors of the model too. Door panel detailing, I would say, is very well done. You, of course, have the same wood grain pattern above the door handle that you see on the dashboard. Nice molded in three-dimensional looking door handles and vents too. And you even have the functional door pockets as well, which I think is a very cool touch. The seats of the model are very well done as well. You do have the nice leather pattern going on there, which you would, of course, see on the real vehicle. And Maisto also includes the seat belts on the model too. This is back when they weren't always putting in the seat belt details of on their models, but on this DB7, you do get the molded in plastic seat belts, which is a very cool touch. The interior looks, I think, really good in this particular color scheme too. The two-tone black and white color palette going on in there. It just looks very cool, I think, and goes quite well with the light bluish silver hue of the paint job of this model. And then as far as the undercarriage detail goes, there really is not a ton to see down here. The exhaust system is done as a single chrome plastic component, which is kind of typical for a Maisto model. And then you do have a little bit of detailing in the front portion here, where the engine, of course, is housed. But aside from that, not really a whole lot to see down here as far as those details go. So I think this model does hold up quite well to more recently released Maisto models. Of course, if this model were to be re-released today, you would probably have improvements such as painted on or stamped on badges instead of stickers, less pegs to hold in the different lights in place, and have spring-loaded hinged doors as opposed to the dog-leg hinged doors. But really, aside from that, all the details and build quality on this model, I think, are very good, especially for a model that was released over 25 years ago at this point. So if you're a fan of, sports cars or supercars from the early 2000s, or of the Aston Martin brand in general, I think this model is a really good choice to add to your collection of 1/18 scale models. As long as you're paying under, $50 for it, I think you're getting a really good deal. Of course, you may want to pay a little bit more than that if there is a particular version of the model that you really want for your collection, such as the version that comes with that wood base that I mentioned in the beginning portion of the video. Definitely a great model, and I would recommend getting it if you like it. Feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.